bats went quiet really throughout, but here in Pittsburgh, whether it was Bennett or Sandoval here today, didn't have their A stuff, fell behind early in those games, and kind of got to regroup, get on a flight, get back to Fenway Park, and play better baseball.
Boy, Lou Maloney makes it sound easy, doesn't he? Get back to Fenway Park, play better baseball. Simple when you say it that way. And I'm not picking on Lou. I think the world of Lou, but I think it's a logical thing that everyone would point to and say, okay, get back home, play better. Early in the year, it was the opposite. Get away from Fenway and play better because the Red Sox couldn't play well at home, Fenway Park. Now the thing is flipped, and now they can't play well on the road. And actually, they didn't play well at Fenway in their final series before they left. That one was against the A's. 617-779-0985. We'll take your calls early and often tonight. Tim Healy, the Globe, will be joining us a little bit later. There is news coming out of Fenway Park, which we'll touch on a little bit later in the show, but I'll give you the essence of it now. Trevor Story told reporters before tonight's game against Arizona, the Diamondbacks are in town for a 3-game series. Red Sox will then be off Thursday. The Giants and Rafael Devers come into town, along with Marcelo Meyer, presumably. I don't know if he's on a rehab or if he's even active yet, but Devers' return to Fenway will be on Friday night. Again, 617-779-0985. Here's the news with Trevor Story. He told reporters over at Fenway tonight, a little while ago, that he believes he can be through his rehab assignment and back in the lineup Friday night. Friday night against the Giants. That the rehab assignment for Trevor Story would take just a few days. And I've told you this before. This should be instructive. That when you're talking about positional players, once they go through the rehab, it doesn't often take a lot of at-bats for them to get ready to come back to the big leagues. And when I say to be ready, I mean ready to play in big league games. The timing might be a little off. That can take a little while, but that's going to take a little while no matter what. So my question with Trevor Story, and I'll put this as just sort of an aside for the moment, but if you want to weigh in on it, by all means, we'll take your calls. Do you want him back? Do you want him back that quickly? Do they want him back that quickly? Now, their play hasn't been good of late, so maybe it comes at a good time. I'm just not that big of a Trevor Story fan. So a few days back on Friday night feels a little quick for me. But my guess is that the Red Sox aren't going to stand in his way. And I do think there's a story there as well with Trevor Story. And that is how they integrate him, how they make it work, and what it looks like. Because honestly, early in the year, he was one of the worst players in baseball. And that is no exaggeration. The Red Sox at shortstop between Marcelo Meyer and Trevor Story, those are the two primary starters up until the trading deadline or right before it. Those two guys gave the Red Sox maybe the worst shortstop play in the entire sport. Now, second base is in play for Story, so we'll see how that goes. But I think that there is, something that has to be hashed out there with Trevor Story. I want to avoid using the word there's a story with Story. But there is a narrative or a story to be told with how that all gets handled, where he plays, and what he gives them. Because what he gave them early in the year was not much. So, again, I'll put that on the side burner for now, but if you want to offer your thoughts, by all means do so. Here's the other thing, and to me this is the bigger story. I tend to be big picture with baseball, especially because they play so many freaking games that it's hard to nail down any singular thing as a big deal unless it extends for a period of time. You win 32 out of 37. That's a big picture streak. So right now they've lost 7 out of 9. They went on the road to Toronto and avoided a sweep in the final game. Then they went to Pittsburgh and lost 2 out of 3. I thought they were starting to come out of it when they went into Pittsburgh. Sonny Gray pitched them to a shutout win, and you thought, okay, here you go. As it turns out, they lose 2 out of 3 to the Pirates, who are one of the worst teams in baseball. They lost 2 out of 3 to the Jays, or 3 out of 4 to the Jays, who are the worst team in the division. And prior to that, the A's beat the Red Sox 2 out of 3 as well. And those are all bad teams. The Red Sox have not played well for a little while. It's not just in the middle of this streak. Here is my question as it pertains to the bigger picture about the Red Sox for both you and the organization. Are you already satisfied? If the Red Sox make the playoffs right now, they're 5.5 games up. They haven't lost a lot of ground in this wild card race because the league is so wretched that they can lose 7 out of 9 and not give up any ground. The league is that bad. Which is why just getting into the playoffs should not be enough for you. And it shouldn't be enough for them, but I do wonder, did the 32-5, did that streak completely restore your faith in the organization and have you believing that they are now on the right track, making the right decisions, and that they now have your trust back? Or do you still raise an eyebrow? Do you still look at them warily and wonder, what am I going to get here, both in the short term and the long? And I'm not even talking about the work stoppage of Major League Baseball or the prospect of one. I mean, when you look at the Red Sox organization, do you feel like they have regained the winning quotient, for lack of a better term? And do you feel like they are as driven to win championships, like all of that has come back? Because I don't. And the more I look at Adley Rutschman play, and I tried to tell you this at the time, but a lot of you were so head over heels and geeked up about the acquisition of Adley Rutschman that I think you missed the real story, which is that he hasn't been the same player for 3 years. He's 1 for 17 in his first 5 games with the Red Sox. They've lost 4 out of the 5. The pitching staff ERA has gone up, and I recognize that you can't necessarily blame him for that last part, but I'm just giving you the numbers. The pitching has gotten worse. He has 1 hit, which was an infield single. He has struck out 9 times. So in half of his at-bats, 17 at-bats, he has 9 strikeouts. You want to add in the 5 walks to the plate appearances, that's fine. That brings the number of plate appearances to 22. So he's got 1 hit, 5 walks, 9 strikeouts, and 22 plate appearances. Is that what you were expecting when you gave up all kinds of future potential or prospects? You gave up all kinds of prospects for Adley Rutschman? That's what you were looking at? That's what you were thinking? Because I was expecting more. They were undoubtedly expecting more. So here's my point to you. Don't be satisfied with any of this, and don't get complacent even or just because the rest of the league isn't good enough to exploit the flaws in this ball club. They still have flaws. They've played lousy baseball of late, and now they're not pitching. And there are some injuries on top of it. So even if Story does come back on Friday, A, what's he going to give you? B, is their pitching going to be good enough for it to make a difference? Because Jake Bennett has hit the wall. Patrick Sandoval kind of stinks and has sucked really for the whole time he's been out there, despite what the numbers say. He hasn't been very good, and now Justin Slayton has joined Garrett Whitlock on the injured list. You're not getting Whitlock back for another 10 days, at least. Slayton's going to be out for a while. So I think there is enough there now for you to be a little worried, at least a little worried, and to look at the whole situation with the Red Sox and say, that 32-5, that better have not been it. If I said that right. That better not have been it. 617-779-0985. Frank's in Boston. He'll kick us off tonight. What do you got, Frank?
Yeah, so in answer to your question, sadly, we know how they're going to define success, which is just making the playoffs. In my mind, in this league, when everyone stinks and with this playoff structure where everyone gets in, after giving up what they did at the deadline, that does not come close to cutting it. I'm curious what you would define as both sufficient and an actual success. I would say Nothing short of making it to the ALCS is actual success. Winning the wild card round is just sufficient. And then regardless of what happens this year, I still do not trust them one bit, nor do I expect any of it to sustain.
So, Frank, it's a good question. Like, what would I define as success for them? And I'll tell you this, as recently as a couple of weeks ago, maybe less. But let's go back a couple of weeks, because last week was a completely suck week. But if you go back to the week before that, before the, I was going to say the Oakland series, the A's series, you know what we were talking about for the Red Sox? We were talking about potentially going to the World Series and being the best team in the American League. That's what we were talking about. We were looking at the Yankees and saying, well, if they don't get Judge back, they're beatable. And we're looking at everybody else in the league and saying, well, there are no great shakes. Tampa has obviously pulled away now and opened up a big division lead. But I don't think anybody instinctively looks at Tampa and says that they're unbeatable. If the Red Sox are playing like they did at their best, they can beat Tampa Bay. They can beat the Yankees without Judge. Judge comes back. I think it's a different thing for the Yankees. So, as Frank asked the question of what would I deem to be a success, my instinct was to say, well, get to the division series, tell me who you're playing, and then we'll go from there. But you know what? That's not enough. The league stinks. The league stinks. So if we're being fair, we should expect more from them when the league is bad, not less. So the 2-7 over a nine-game stretch, it hasn't hurt them, but that doesn't mean you should have faith in them. I was worried about the pitching really from the time last week that Bennett started going back a little ways, really, since Bennett started to hit the wall, and then when Whitlock went down. When Whitlock went down, that worried me. So I look at the Red Sox now and I say, the team that's on the field now is not good enough. And I don't mean that in terms of talent. I mean the product, the performance of the team on the field. There's no way they should go 2-7 at Toronto and at Pittsburgh. That's just not good enough. And I'm including the final couple of games of the A's series. 2-7 in your last 9, not good enough. With their pitching and their defense and their ability to scrape out runs, they should be better than that. So we'll continue with your calls. I see a number you lined up. Jeff's in New Hampshire, Adrian's in Framingham, Ron's in Worcester. We'll also bring in Tim Healy of the Globe, get his thoughts on Trevor Story's news before the game, as well as the overall play of the team and the return of people like Roman Anthony. And if we get to it, I'd love to ask him about Adley Rutschman, who I think has been hot garbage since he's joined the team. All of that tonight on the Baseball Hour. All right, several months ago, I met Tim Healy of the Boston Globe for the first time. Had never had the pleasure of meeting him before. You've been reading his work in the Globe now for some time. I'm glad that he's finally been able to join us. He's done a number of spots with Toucher and Hardy in the mornings, and we can bring him in tonight. It's a good night to do it. So, Tim, first of all, thank you for joining us. I appreciate you doing it, especially on a game night.
Thank you for having me. Happy to.
Okay, so let me ask you, first of all, I don't even know. I just assumed you were over at the ballpark tonight, but if you were on the road, you might not be, so you are over there. Okay.
Yep.
Trevor Story indicated before the game, I saw the comments online, many people have seen, read them or heard them, that Story said he thinks he can be wrapped up with a rehab and be in the lineup in Boston on Friday night against the Giants. You tell me, is that a realistic goal?
I didn't think so, because Chad Tracy over the weekend in Pittsburgh was talking about how they want to bring him along, right? He played 4 innings with Worcester on Sunday. They want him to play back-to-back games of pretty much 9 innings at shortstop. And the 3 games just seems really fast after 3 months on the sideline. So Friday would surprise me. Chad Tracy emphasized, we haven't gotten that far yet. We haven't talked about it at all. And Chad Tracy made it sound like they do have more rehab games outlined for him this weekend after Story plays Tuesday, Wednesday, and is off Thursday. So the plan seems like more minor league games over the weekend, but plans can change. So if Trevor Story can convince them that he's ready, then maybe they'll go for that.
So, Tim, this is part of what I wonder is I'm not sure they want him back that quickly. And, well, no, look, and I'm not trying to be, I'm not trying to suggest that, I mean, the guy's going to come back and play. I think that part is pretty clear. But I think he's trying to force their hand. They've settled into a nice thing. And
Yep.
not that they're playing well in the last 9 games, but the season, I think let me put it this way. When people say what is the singular biggest turning point of the season, a lot of people have instinctively said, well, they've played great since they fired Cora. And that is simply not true. It's they played poorly for a long time after that. They were 14 games under 500 at one stage, and that was with Tracy basically managing as many games as Cora had. I think the season changed when they got Story and Marcelo Meyer out of the middle of the infield. I think their shortstop play became infinitely better, and certainly they started to hit. I don't mean to dismiss that, but neither Meyer nor Story produced anything for them. And so I'm not surprised that Story wants to get back on the field because he missed all the good stuff.
Yeah, he did.
So do you think that, I guess what I'm saying is, what do you think they're going to ultimately do with Story when he's ready to come back?
I think he's going to be a shortstop. I think when he comes back, he's going to get the chance to be the everyday shortstop again. And whether it's Friday or next week or whenever, part of what the Red Sox have to do over these next 6 weeks is figure out what they actually have in Trevor Story. And then they, to be clear, probably don't want to take all 6 weeks remaining in the regular season to find that answer. But it's an open question right now. The sports hernia had bothered Story since spring training. Last summer, Trevor Story turned the season around and was amazing for like 3 months. This year, he stunk, and then he had surgery. So when he comes back shortly, which version of Trevor Story are you getting? Because if it's the summer 2025 Trevor Story, then you're cooking with gas. But if he doesn't look at it meaningfully better compared to April, May, then you have to look at your other options. And yes, Andrew Monasterio has been crushing it at the plate for a bunch of weeks now. Defensively, I guess he's passable. Some other guys have mixed in there. It's been a while since Marcelo, of course, has played shortstop. But, yeah, that is part of the calculus here. And to go back to the earlier point about the rehabbing, the Red Sox right now, despite what the last week looks like, do have the luxury of time. They don't need Trevor Story back on Thursday. They can give him some run as the starting shortstop when he does come back, because right now they're still sitting pretty for the playoff picture, right? I think it's 5 or 5.5 games up in the wild card race. So
5.5.
They're in a very good spot. The sky is not falling, and hopefully they don't make any rush decisions on any of these fronts.
Tim, if I were to ask you who has been the best defensive shortstop that the Red Sox have had this season, who would you say?
Oh, boy. That is a great question. IKF, maybe?
Okay, so
he had some run there, post-Story, yeah.
I think it's Cheng. I think...
I forgot about Cheng. I totally agree with you. With apologies to Cheng, I agree that Cheng was probably the best defensive shortstop they've had.
Okay, so why have they not considered, keeping him in that role? And I understand he's not much of a threat, but I thought the defense was so far superior to everyone else that they had out there. Why were they so eager to send Cheng back down?
Because he didn't hit. They liked Nick Sogard's bat and all-around skill set better. Because remember, trying to remember the sequence of events here, but for a while there, it was Monasterio and Chang, basically in a platoon at shortstop. And then, Romy came back, and they got rid of Chang. And then a couple days later, somebody else got hurt. They could have brought back Chang, but they brought back Sogard instead, who had been passed over when he had gotten healthy. So they just like Sogard as a player better than Chang all around.
So, look, I like Sogard, too. I just think Cheng at shortstop gives them a level of defense that they don't otherwise have. And,
Yeah.
but again, if Story comes back and plays shortstop, it's all moot. I personally think they should put Story at second base, but my guess is they're not going to demote him like that in mid-season, which is the wrong reason to put him at shortstop. Tim, with all that has gone wrong in the last couple of weeks, the thing that I think should concern people the most is the state of the pitching staff. Jake Bennett appears to have hit a wall. Sandoval's been, walking a little bit of a tightrope even in his good outings, and now those are starting to come back and bite him in the ass. Again, just really dug him an enormous hole yesterday. And then when you add in the injuries of Garrett Whitlock and now Slayton, it feels like they're getting hit at both ends. How worried should people be about the pitching?
Yeah, if this turns into a total bottom falling out, or if it turns into a very short stay in the playoffs, I think it's going to be because of the pitching. The rotation, we knew at the trade deadline, when they did not add a starting pitcher, which they were in the market for, that the rotation was going to become suspect. The rookies and their innings totals, Patrick Sandoval, and just generally not knowing what his couple of months are going to look like. And then you're banking on Sonny Gray having basically the best year of his career still, and Ranger Suarez, who's been suspect in the second half the last few years. So you look at that, and then the next man up is Brian Bayo, and the next man up after that is I don't even know who, maybe Eduardo Rivera. The depth chart starts to look not that deep. So yes, and now in just 2 weeks since the deadline, we start to see some of that come to fruition with Bennett, with Sandoval. And in the bullpen, Whitlock and Slayton, both those guys went to get MRIs today on their elbows. No word on what those MRIs showed, but best case scenario, they're out for just a couple of weeks. Regardless, the acquisition of Eric Miller from the Giants looks huge because now all of a sudden your back end of the bullpen is Eric Miller, Tyron Guerrero, who was a disaster last time we saw him, and then Aroldis Chapman, who's also been walking a bit of a tightrope recently. So it starts to get really hairy, really fast. So far, there haven't been any major blows to the pitching staff, but you can see some cracks starting to form.
All right, Tim Healy, the Globe, again joining us tonight. Tim, before I let you go, because I know you got a game coming up here in a bit. We had a caller ask a short time ago that I thought was an interesting question. When you look at where the Red Sox are right now, do you already deem their season to be a success? And what do they have to do if and when they get into the postseason? What do they have to do to make sure it's a success?
Given where they are right now, I still judge them by the standard that I think we all held coming into the season, which was making it into the playoffs. Merely qualifying is not enough. You did that last year and you lost in the first round. You have to make it into the playoffs and at least win at least a couple of rounds and play deeper into October. Now, that's not to take away from how delightful this turnaround has been and how much the fan base has re-embraced them and the winning streak in July and all of that. That has been plenty valuable and enjoyable for everybody. But when you're zooming out and looking at the success or lack of success of the season, we are about to find out in the next 6 weeks and beyond.
Yeah, to me, they got to. I'm sort of still stuck on. If you would ask this question 2 weeks ago, people were all talking about the chance to go to the World Series because the American League is so bad. So it's got to be at least a run at the LCS and something like that before. There's just been too much failure here in the postseason for too long for people to just write this off. So anyway, they got another couple of opponents this week that they should be able to handle. I mean, these are you would think it's really been amazing. It blows hot and cold with this team. It doesn't seem like there's a lot in between. But listen, thanks for taking the time. I know you got a lot to do over there tonight. Game coming up shortly, so I appreciate you joining us.
You got it. Happy to.
Okay, the guy again, Tim Healy, the Boston Globe, joining us. So here's what we're going to do because there's another question I think relates to the Diamondbacks being in town that I wasn't going to introduce tonight, but I may raise it in the next segment. It concerns Torey Lovullo, the manager of the Diamondbacks, who was the interim manager here when John Farrell was being treated for illness. I think it was cancer at the time at Farrell, right, Jimmy? Boy, that seems so long ago. But Lavello ended up in Arizona.
Many would say that he's to be credited for the development of Betts, Bogarts, Benintendi, that group.
Okay, so there you go. Torey Lavello's on the hot seat in Arizona. I'm just wondering if that should factor into the Red Sox plans. We'll talk about that when we come back. Kevin Majori's got your headlines.
Sports Hub headlines.
Adley trying to break an 0 for 13.
And the strikeouts kind of make you know that it's not right now for Adley, one of the elite guys. He really rarely strikes out. 14.1% rate.
And that'll be in there for strike 3. 2 down.
So let me just say before we get to Torey Lavello that if the Red Sox, dare I say, come apart, and come apart's too strong because I think they're going to make the playoffs, if only because I don't think there's anybody else that's good enough in the American League to challenge them for one of those two spots. And really, they're the second wild card team right now, but to fall out of the wild card entirely, they'd have to also fall beyond the team that's in the third spot. And I don't think there's a team good enough to catch the Red Sox where they are right now. So I think they're going to make it. But we will look at the trading deadline as a pivotal point for this team and for this reason, because the Red Sox got hit on both sides. And by that, I mean they traded away a lot of young talent to get Adley Rutschman, who's been a big fat zero to this point. Huge zero so far for Adley Rutschman. 1 for 17, 9 strikeouts, 5 walks. His only hit was an infield single. And he's really had no impact on the club whatsoever. In fact, I would say the only impact he's had has been negative. So, and you gave up. Curtis Mead obviously has been injured. And the Red Sox gave up Connolly Early as a pitcher in this process too. Now, Early obviously was injured at the time, but you get the idea. With Jake Bennett deteriorating, Suarez not pitching well, now Sandoval scuffling, the Red Sox suddenly don't have enough pitching, and their team is built on pitching. So if their pitching lacks the depth that it could have had or might have had, and their offense isn't improved as a result of the trading deadline, they're in big trouble. And all I'm telling you is don't all of a sudden change your expectations and standards for the organization and the team just because they went 32-5 and resurrected their season. Resurrecting it was not enough. They need to make some noise in October. That's number one. Number two, as it relates to the manager, Chad Tracy, who has done a fine job. I don't mean to diminish that at all. But I did see something written by Bob Nightingale over the weekend of USA Today, speculating on the kinds of people whose jobs could be in jeopardy if teams don't make the playoffs. One of the names that Bob Nightingale threw out there was Torey Lovullo of the Arizona Diamondbacks. Lovullo was very highly regarded here when he filled in for John Farrell. And Jimmy, you're going to have to help me with the year. I don't remember what year that was. When Farrell was out getting treatment for cancer, Lovullo took over the manager's
2014, Tony.
Okay, the 2014 season. Lovullo did a nice job to the point where it basically helped him get the Arizona job. So now, if Lovullo is out, and he's a guy, if he's out in Arizona, and he's a guy who has had ties to the Red Sox organization, would you rather have Lovullo or Chad Tracy? I'm just asking the question. Which guy would you rather have? Get back to your phone calls here for the last little bit of the show, 617-779-0985. We'll try to fit in as many people as possible. Adrian in Framingham. Adrian, go ahead.
Yeah, hey, Mazz. Love the show. I was curious your take and if you have any data. I know you talked about this seasons before, but Andrew Bailey's and ultimately Breslow's philosophy on pitching. It just seems like you mentioned early being traded and he was on the IL. Now you have Slayton, then you have Whitlock, of course, Crochet. Like, it just seems like the Red Sox put more pitchers on the IL than any other team in the major leagues. And I don't know if you agree with that or if that's true or not. It just seems to be the case.
Yeah, so Adrian, I'll tell you what, it would be an interesting study now that you bring it up. I mean, they have had some injuries. There's no question about it. I honestly think injuries are rampant throughout Major League Baseball when it comes to pitchers, but I'd love to see a study on it if there was a way to quantify it. If you're talking about games lost to the injured list or something of that like, how many pitchers have other organizations, how many games to injury have other organizations lost? It'd be an interesting study. So could it be the fact that the Red Sox spin it more than other teams? I don't know, maybe. I think it's a problem throughout baseball because everybody's pitching with max effort now. It is max effort constantly. And I don't care how big you are, how strong you are, how hard you throw it. If you challenge the limits of the human body repeatedly, it's going to break. So, Mizorowski, the kid in Milwaukee, who's throwing 105 miles an hour, I think it's a matter of time before pop goes the weasel. And there goes that elbow, too. And maybe he'll come back and, he'll recover from it, and the arm might even be stronger after the initial surgery. But I still think that there's a reason why arms pop. There is a limit to what the human body can do. I know some people don't think that, but there is a limit. And so now, but back to your question, are the Red Sox challenging it in their own way? Probably. I mean, these guys are all throwing, again, Bayo's throwing harder now than he was when he went down. So is that purely mechanics, biomechanics? And the other thing is being able to throw at a certain velocity and being able to pitch at it for a long period of time are two entirely different things. John in Malden. John, go ahead.
Yeah, I think Red Sox fans should be absolutely happy where they are. Okay, if you take the big streak out of it, they're not that very good. I mean, even the Baltimore Orioles. Okay, John, wait a minute.
Today. Even I wouldn't say you can take the best streak out of it. It was 37 games. They won 32 of them. Why should you take that streak out of it? Because
look where they are, Tony. I mean, they're barely, they're in, but the league, like you said, the league stinks. But they're not going to play those stinky teams in the playoffs. They're going to play the better teams, which are Tampa Bay, Yankees, White Sox, Houston. And those teams are just as good as the Red Sox, and the Red Sox are coming apart at the seams.
Okay, they did beat a number of those teams that you mentioned. They didn't play Houston in the stretch you're talking about, but they beat Tampa Bay, they beat the Yankees, they beat the White Sox. The teams they're losing to are the bad teams. So all I'm saying is this. Believe me, I'd be the first to discredit them with anything if they haven't played enough good competition. 32-5 is 32-5. Now, would I rather be where they are by being 5 games over or 3 games over every month? Yes. I would like to see something more consistent and stable. But when you say they're not this good, I would say they're not 32-5 good. I also would tell you they never should have been 14 games under 500. So you want to tell me those two things offset? Fine. And I would agree. They're pretty good. They're not great. But I don't know if anybody in the league is great. So could they beat the White Sox in a series? I think so. If there's no Judge in New York, could they beat the Yankees? I think so. Could they beat Tampa? I think so. The American League's wide open. And don't be happy with where you are. Like, don't all of a sudden give them an out. Say, okay, they don't have to play great down the stretch because what they did was overachieve. In the big picture, they have not overachieved. They should have been a team that was better than 500 from the very start. Peter in Tingsboro. Go ahead, Peter.
Yeah, I want to talk about, I was at the game yesterday. These guys, they're just not killers. Sandoval's acting like a baby with the gesturing on his glove. Ceddanne Rafaela's, telling the fans to F off. And then Jarren Duran, we stuck around through that rain delay. He's the only guy out that comes back out onto the field, but he's got to talk with his parents for 15, 20 minutes. There's 10 kids waiting for his autograph. He doesn't even have 60 seconds to help kids that waited there for basically 7 hours. The guy's a narcissist. I'm done with him. Yeah, okay, Peter. I there's a lot of things I'll accept complaints on. People complaining about guys not giving autographs during rain delays. You're not going to get me on that one. I mean, look, with all due respect, not every kid's going to get his autograph when he's there. Okay, now people telling fans to F off or whatever, I'd say I'd take your word for it, but I really don't. I mean, who knows? I can't prove what's true or isn't. If you say Rafaela was swearing to people, so be it. So I'm sorry you got stuck in a rain delay. It's one of the hazards of going to a game. And I'm not trying to be a dick about it, but if Jarren Duran's using a little bit of time there, and the game technically is still ongoing, so he can do whatever he wants. I'm not going to pick on him for that one. Harry and Quincy. Harry, what do you got?
Tony, real quick on the pitchers getting injured. It seems like the past few years, we get half of these guys come here and they're injured, and they're getting them on a 1-year or 2-year deal. All right? Am I wrong to say that? I'll hang up and listen.
Yeah,
Tony.
no, Harry, you're not wrong. Patrick Sandoval is a guy who was coming off of Tommy John, and the Red Sox have signed a number of these deals over the years where they get these guys who are rehabbing. They sign them to, in the case of Sandoval, I want to say the deal was 2 years, $18 million, something like that. And he's given them, 5 or 6 starts? I don't even know what the actual number is. Jimmy, you want to just help me out with that? How many starts Sandoval has made so far? I'm going to say a half dozen. They haven't been very good, though, and this is part of the deal when you get guys who are coming off injuries. Even if they do rehab well, or the rehab goes well, and then they come back and they pitch, it takes them a while to get back to full speed. So you're not going to get the best version of that pitcher. So, yes, they've signed a crap ton of those guys. Really going back to 8 years now, 7 or 8 years. I did a list of them at one point. I want to say between relievers and starters, they've spent something in the range of $150 million, or I don't remember what the actual number was.
It was around 150, and Sandoval, 7 starts this year, is getting $12.75 million. Last year, he got 5.5.
Okay, so again, it comes out to about $18 million over 2 years, and really what you're paying him for is $18 million for a third of a season. That's really what it is.
Money well spent, if you ask nobody.
So this is the part I don't get with how the Red Sox do it. I know they worry about the long-term ramifications of some of these contracts. They don't like the dead money. But if you do the math with Sandoval, they pay him $18 million. He ends up pitching, let's call it 10. He makes 10 starts for them. It's a third of a season. So really, they're paying him for $54 million for a full season's work. It just feels ridiculous. Frank and Revere. Frank, go ahead.
Yeah, hi, Tony. You asked a question about 5 minutes ago. I mean, you were asking us, Tony Lavello may be available at the end of the season. Interesting subject. And then you said, who would you rather have, Lavello or Tracy? You're right, exactly. So now I'm going to turn the tables, and I'm going to ask you, and I'll listen. Who would you rather have?
So, Frank, if I'm being honest, I lean towards Lavello. That's the reason I asked the question. He's a guy who's been around a little bit and managed in the big leagues, and he took a team to the playoffs. In fact, was he the manager, Jimmy, when they went to the World Series? He was.
He was.
So, I look at Lavello, and I said, well, there's a guy that's done a pretty good job with a young and up-and-coming team and took him to the World Series. And if he's on the market and he's got a connection to the organization, why wouldn't you go that route? Now, Breslow probably has a relationship with Tracy. There are other things to consider there. I get it. So I on the one hand, I can't sit here and tell you that the relationship between a GM and a manager, that working relationship is the most important relationship in any organization. And if Tracy and Breslow are working well together, that has value. But I also don't think that Lavello is necessarily going to come in and have this massive ego. He's familiar with the organization. He knows what he's getting into. And look, they may not even get rid of him. I'm going by what Bob Nightingale reported over the weekend. That if Arizona doesn't make it, Lavello's future could be in jeopardy. Squeeze in Steve in Brookline or Garrett Crochet. Go ahead, Steve.
Hi, Tony. Quick question. So you've discussed ownership has motivation, private credit has motivation, and obviously the folks that listen to this radio station have motivation. They want to win. Does Garrett Crochet have any control as a competitive pitcher to say, hey, listen, I want to help you guys out as a team to make a run? I'll listen. Thank you.
So, look, Steve, the speculation on Crochet now is that he doesn't have enough time to ramp up as a starter, and that if he's actually going to come back and pitch at all, it will be out of the bullpen. Now, could he help him out of the bullpen? Sure. Especially if Whitlock and Slayton are banged up? Yeah. That could help. Now, is it feasible or is it realistic that could happen? I don't know. I'll be honest with you. I've written off Crochet. He hasn't pitched all year. He was never right. He was never right. He wasn't right in spring training. He wasn't right when the season started. He never got right. And then he was out and he's been out. And he hasn't had surgery. So this feels like an awfully long absence for there to be nothing wrong with a guy. And that it was just a muscle strain and now all of a sudden he can come back and pitch. I fear that he's going to start throwing in the offseason, maybe feel better, get to spring training, and the whole thing happens again, and then he's looking at surgery and he misses a year. On top of this one. So that would be my concern. But if he comes back and pitches in September and October, sure, you'll take him, bullpen or otherwise. You'd absolutely take him.
Tony, he could be the opener for Brian Bayo.
So there you go. That's another way to look at it, Jimmy. Interesting. Anyway, that wraps us up tonight. Kevin Majoria gets you caught up on headlines. Jimmy, I'm assuming it's Joe Murray?
Correct.
Okay, there you go. Joe Murray.
Oh, Sean Silver, I'm sorry.
Oh, Sean Silver's in it. I haven't seen him in a while. But anyway, Sean will have you for the balance of the night. We will catch you tomorrow on the Baseball Hour.
The Baseball Hour. Stop chasing parts. New Power is a global distributor with access to allocated and hard-to-find inventory. We stock and source memory, CPUs, GPUs, and more. Over 300 million in inventory and global reach. We keep parts moving because parts don't sleep. Visit newpowerww.com. No two businesses are alike, and neither are their insurance needs. That's why Concord Group Insurance partners with local independent agents to offer custom commercial coverage that works for your operation. Whether you run a cafe, a construction crew, or a consulting firm, our local service and nearly 100 years of expertise are behind you every step of the way. Protect what you've built. Call your